We back at it again. We back at it again. There's Minx to the Blue Sea. What's up, y'all? I know. It's not chapter review. I know. But back in when I first started, I did videos all the time that had nothing to do with the chapter. Of course, I used to edit too. Eventually, I'm gonna get back to that, but it's just not in my scheduling right now. Given what I think good editing is, that takes a lot of time that I just don't have yet. So y'all will know if you look at my earlier stuff, you can see like, okay, he kind of gets it. He just stopped doing it. But that's a whole nother story. Um, Today I want to talk about old stuff, old One Piece stuff, because every couple of years I reread the series. Usually in the summer when I have time, because that's usually when I have the most free time, at least for reading manga and stuff like that. I wasn't recording the last time I did this. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just every 50 chapters or so, or, depending on how the progression of an arc ends, or, something like that. It won't be an arc review or a saga review, none of that. Just going through every chapter, man, and reading and enjoying some of the stuff that even sometimes I underappreciate just because it's not as prevalent in the story because of where the focus is, right? We don't always need to world build anymore because this world's been built for decades. So seeing this stuff again for the first time, like when you know what's going to happen later, and even things like from the last time that I reread the series, there's different things that I remember. The nostalgia is different, and different sections hit harder because of where we're at now. And I think because of where I got into around chapter 40ish, just like in real life, the first time I read the story, even though I had seen clips of it, I knew it was around. I was one of those people, I read what I read and I get offline. Online was still new back then. So that was like, you get on, you do what you do, and you get off before you get a virus. That was basically how I looked at the internet in the early days of commercial use. But this time around, there's so many things that I noticed that I forgot about, and I still feel the same way. Don't get me wrong, the early chapters are cool. They're exciting. You're learning about Luffy and stuff like that. But I think when the setup hits, for me, where I'm like, oh, there's more to this than what's going on. This guy's just not just like happy go lucky and this is Goku. No. Totally different, similar main character vibe, but their world is totally different as far as how many interactions with people and what was setting up. And I had read a few series before, so I kind of understood a little bit about um, how longer series are written is slightly, I won't say different, but because they're doing so much and they have so much time, in a sense, when you're older, obviously when you're younger, you don't understand that, but the amount of time you have to make your story is different, right? And in the beginning of the story, we don't know how long Oda thought this was going to be around for. So there's certain things where it's like, oh, why do they speak like this, but nobody talks like that in the series no more? And it's not just like they have different translators now and stuff like that. It's you could just tell certain ideas were just brand new to him, and he was just trying to like work it out. But yeah, man, I just thought I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do a video. I'm just gonna talk about that, and because of where I'm at in the story. Around chapter 50ish, that's it starts getting heavy with the talk and the setup and the plot points and the characters, and it's going down. So let's just get into it. Earlier in the chapters, there were some few things that I kind of want to talk about that stood out to me. Like, of course, the obvious stuff, like being introduced to Luffy and Kobe and Alvida and Zoro in the beginning, right? And Axan Morgan and El Meppo and, stuff like that. Seeing Luffy in the beginning, his carefreeness is still hilarious to me, right? Because remember Shanks called him an anchor. He wore an anchor shirt. He couldn't swim even before he had a devil fruit, right? And makes it even funnier is when he first goes out to sea, he hits the whirlpool and he's like, if only I could swim. Or if only I didn't have a devil fruit, I'd be able to swim. And he was like, wait a minute, I never learned how to swim. Oh, I just would have drowned anyway. Oh, well, like, it's stupid, but that's just, to me, that's still fun, because he's not afraid of death. That's never been his thing. We've seen how he got the scar in the first place. He's just not, he'll do anything to prove that he's not afraid and that he's going to do what he said he's going to do. Right. So it's interesting now, especially because we are in the story and some of the things that intertwine, right? Because of the Who's Who chapter with the Gomu Gomu no Mi, and if do we know if it's important or not? If that's true or not? Is that cap? Is it? Did Shanks and his crew know that's what they were going after, or was it just it happened to be there and that's the fruit that they got? Like I discussed in my review, a couple weeks ago about that, but so many things are still ambiguous. And this is what I was talking about with how the series is written, the way people talk sometimes, and you could tell how it's changed over the years. And like I said, some of this might be different translators or, different words become popular, other words don't, that kind of thing. And I'm going to get into it when I get to a certain subject about the Gomu Gomu. But just something to look forward to in a few minutes when I start talking about this. Now, I wasn't into Nami when she was first introduced because she was just annoying. I was like, oh, this is going to be one of those characters. Of course, we didn't know the setup for Bellamere and what Arlong Park was going to be and all that stuff. But this is why I ended up liking the series, because it took a character like that archetype, what Nami is, and something I normally wouldn't be interested in, and completely flipped it on its head. Right? We don't know that this early in the story, but we know later that's where it ends up. Clearly, y'all already know, right? I always been hype on Zoro before I even knew this story, what the story was about. One, because of the fact that he's a swordsman, but two, when I first when I first heard about the series, I seen a clip with Zoro in it. And for those of you who don't know, the voice actor for Zoro was the same voice actor for Mugen on Samurai Champloo, which that was one of my favorite series when it came out on TV, right? Well, not on TV, but you guys know, especially if you're from that era, um, that was the show. That and Cowboy Bebop was the show. Outlaw Star, stuff like that. Like, so for me, Mugen was my favorite character on that show, which that show had some influence on the Boondocks. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of stuff that intertwine within the anime community that's crazy thinking about this. Just the history that I know of, right? There's older stuff than that, but just, all the way back to like Ronin Warriors and the Super Sentai bots and stuff like that. So you know what I'm talking about. The characters that get used over and over again in different series, like Power Rangers and stuff like that. But for me, I think the first time the series kind of had a seriousness of like a Rurouni Kenshin, which or even Samurai Champloo, when they're not goofing off, the actual plot point of the story is extremely serious, and the characters are carefree, but the situations they aren't serious. And One Piece didn't have that feel to me until around that time, right around Captain Coral, when we got the introduction to Usopp, and I liked Usopp right off the bat, like right off the bat, because he was he seemed like he was supposed to be a cowardly character, but he's straight up not. He just isn't. Like, he jokes around about it, but when it comes time to do what needs to be done, man, Usopp, he goes in. Even to this day, what I'm saying, taking headbutts from an ancient Zoan. Like, dude ain't even got no hockey. This is God Usapo out here. You know what I mean? The son of the sniper, and AKA Young Soga King. The way he was introduced to me, there was a lot more effort put into it initially, right? Of course, again, we knew how dark it was going to get for Nami. But at the time, I was just like, okay, Zoro's just some dude who wants to fight people. Cool, gotta have one of those type of guys. Usopp was like kind of like Luffy, but just not strong. You know what I mean? A little bit more common sense. I'm like, okay, I kind of like with this. That's when it started really hitting me. Like, oh, I'm gonna like this series. I like it a lot. And like Buggy, that stuff was cool. Alvito was whatever. Kobe, even Kuro. He just didn't seem that threatening to me. Even when I didn't know anything about the series, he just I don't know what it was about him that just didn't seem all that threat. I think maybe it was the way he is, right? And even Luffy made it a point. He was like, "Look, man, Monkey D. Luffy, man, you're just a loser pirate who couldn't hack it, and you gave up your name and you gave up being a pirate. I can't lose to nobody like you, man. I just can't. I'm gonna be king of the pirates. I can't lose to a guy like that." And I remember the first time I read that and it was just like, oh, okay, this guy he's not just like that goofy main character. Like, no, he's not. It's almost like it's worded like it's supposed to be goofy, but you could tell that he's serious. This is just what he believes. You're gonna have to prove it to him that he's wrong. And I liked that about him I liked that about him from the jump. That was my biggest appeal to him, that he didn't care what anything else looked like. He didn't care how he sounded. All he knew is, this is what I wanted to do, and I'm just gonna stick with this and see what happens. If I die, die. That's not what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of not trying. That's basically what his thing is. Which, in life, that's as cliche as it is. Most of the things that you've gotten out of life that you wanted involve some risk. That at other times you probably didn't take it, and then you wish you did. That you did, and then other times when you do, you're like, even when it doesn't go your way, at least you're not sitting there trying to think about what could have been, right? That's just not what this series is about when it comes in terms of you don't want to live with regrets for not trying, right? Maybe for other reasons, but not for not trying. That can't be an excuse, and that's just been a theme over in the series. So I like that, and I like the fact that right out the gate, he was calling people that, like, oh, you're trash, and oh, Kobe, you're pretty weak, aren't you? You know what I mean? Just straight up, just not even trolling people. It's like, oh, you can't fight. You know what I mean? And it's just funny to me that he's just mad disrespectful without trying to be. He's just like, no, oh, you're trashed here. Okay, there's no problem with being trash. You know what I mean? That's how he talks. Like, oh, you're a scrub, but that's okay. You're cool, man. Like, it's a riot. But some little tidbit stuff I want to talk about too is like little stuff throughout the cover chapters, and when we get the introduction to the first SBSs and just stuff like that. I thought it was cool. Like, in terms of the Gumma Gumma, right? Because this applies to the Who's Who's chapter, obviously, and if the Gumma Gumma is important. And I don't want to, I take things, you got to be careful with especially early series stuff. Once again, you got to think about how the series was translated, who was doing the translating back then, even in the Viz, stuff like that. So certain terminologies disappear from the series. Like when they talk about devil fruits early in the series, in the Viz at least, every time they reference Luffy's fruit, they always add the word that it came from the Gum Gum tree. Now this could be confusing if you're not used to that, how they talk early in the series, right? That would imply that there's other fruits or other implications that you could take from that just because of the way it's worded. So I had to like throw that out. Like, oh yeah, I forgot at the time of the story he didn't know how far he was going, so he probably didn't know everything that he was going to do with devil fruits yet, and stuff like that. So, but what is interesting to me, not just the rarity of fruits, right? I think it was around chapter 20ish, somewhere around there, where you meet Gaimon, the guy in the box, right? Something he said kind of threw me off. Now, thinking about the Gomu Gomu, and like I said, this might be just because of the way it was translated in English and the way they used to speak in the series early on. Gaimon mentions that like he heard tales of the devil fruit. But it's left vague because you can't really tell if he means devil fruits in general, or does he mean the Goma Goma? Because he says this right after Luffy says, I've eaten the gum gum fruit for the gum gum tree. Gaimon says something like, this is the first time he met someone that has eaten the fruit. Once again, this is left vague, that you don't know if he's really talking about his first time meeting someone who's eaten the gum gum fruit in particular, or just a devil fruit, because of how long he's been in that island, right? He was there for 20 years. There's a possibility that even way back then, right? This is, like I said, chapter 20-ish or so. He may have had the idea that the fruit actually is going to be important later. It just doesn't play a role in the story. So it's like little moments like these. There's a couple other examples. They're just not that important to bring up. But just something I wasn't really looking for. But as soon as I read it, because of obviously what's going on currently in the story, it made me think about it different. Like, I wonder if this is left vague on purpose, or this was just how it was written at the time, because he didn't know how long the series is going to be. That threw me off. Just little stuff like that. And the other thing was, the first time we see a dragon in this series is back in chapter 31 or 32. And I know there's different types of dragons, and obviously mythology is big in this series. And I'm pretty sure he thought about all this stuff before he even started writing it. But I do find it noticeable that the dragon he uses, it looks pretty much like the same version of the dragon that Momo is. And I'm not sure if he knew Momo was going to be a character, but I'm sure he knew he was going to use the mythology in the series, because even in that cover chapter, Luffy is like standing on top of Zoro or something like that, and it's basically in a type of pose that has been referenced through mythology when it comes to monkeys, right? Even having a staff, right? Enma, not Enma from Odin, but if you think of Naruto, Saratobi's staff, right? That was a monkey, the diamond staff or whatever. It's very possible he thought about the mythology being implied into the series since then. So this isn't something he just pulled out of left field. But again, I've read this story like 3 or 4 times, and I never noticed it until now because of what's happened currently in the story. So I just thought that was interesting. And what else was it? Nothing happened with Zoro. That statement actually, I never really remembered it used that way. But again, when you're rereading the series, all these memories come back, and the stuff you just completely misremembered how it was worded. And nothing actually happened with Usopp. And that was basically his response to telling his crew, right? Carrot, Pepper, and Onion, the boys that he disbanded, his pirates at the end of before he left with the Straw Hats. He said, because him being brave, and remember him lying all the time, no one was going to believe him that he helped keep the town safe. And because he's a liar anyway, and you know what? We'll just scratch it off as one of Usopp's fables, which, if you know about Aesop's fables, I just assume that's kind of where Usopp's names come from. It has something to do with that, because he's the one telling stories. And it's possible at the end of the series that he could be the one telling the story, right? Or Brooke, if you've ever seen that theory before, that Brooke is explaining the Straw Hats, like, goals in past tense. It's just that it's told in present tense to whoever he's telling the story to, which that theme has been used in writing before. So a lot of people don't like it. I understand it, but it's just interesting that it is a possibility. And for Usopp, him saying nothing happened, and then we get what happens years later, basically chapters later, hundreds of chapters later, with what happened with Zoro and Kuma. It's just like, man, I wonder if he knew that he was going to use that phrase again way back then. And it's just like, wow, I know every little instance isn't artfully contrived on that scale, but I find it hard to believe that it didn't even at least cross his mind or one of his editors, like, oh, you said that back in chapter, 40 or whatever, 38, use nothing happened. And he's just like, I don't care, I'll use it again. You know what I mean? But I like the fact that in both those instances, it was to save face for other people, and it had nothing to do with their own reputation or their pride or anything like that. Like Zoro didn't want Luffy to know what happened, and Usopp felt like he didn't need the town people to respect him on that level to know what he did. Right? His crew knew what he did, and as a captain, he went hard for his crew. Even when he couldn't, right? They still protected Kaya. I mean, even Kaya pulled the pistol out on Captain Curl. Like, you know what? You gonna kill me anyway? Of course, she didn't do nothing with it, but it's just funny. Like all these little things in the earlier in the series. Like I forgot she straight pulled a gun out on Captain Curl. Like the series was wild back then, man. It was funny to me. But the other things that I liked were, well, of course, like the way that Usopp disbanded the crew. That might be something because we've seen that with Roger. It might happen at the end of the series too, where it's like, man. And then you think about Usopp writing a logbook that comes into play early in the series when we get introduced to Sanji. Man, Sanji's introduction was so dope to me because at the time, I'd seen Lupin before. I knew who that was, and Cowboy Bebop with Spike Spiegel. That's the kind of character vibes that I got from Sanji the first time we met him. Like, oh, this guy's on one. He's telling jokes. He's telling full body he's trash. Like, oh, that's Cap. You don't know what this wine is. Stop trying to play with me. Putting bugs in the soup. Don't waste food. You know what I mean? Like, the setup and when Sanji's first introduced, that was what got me. Like I said, from Captain Curl to Sanji's introduction, we get a little bit about Mihawk. I was like, Hawkeyes, what is that? Like, oh, if Zoro's hyped for it, it's going to be hype. You know what I mean? I mean, we see what happened, but like even Zoro accusing Nami of being a witch way back in the day. Like, people were talking about that then because of the way he said Nami had bewitched Sanji, at least in the vids, that's how it's translated. Like, references way back in the story, so it's like now this thing with Nami and being a witch is still like a thing, possibly, right? Just because of Mirage Tempo and stuff like that, and controlling the weather and her situation with Big Mom and Zeus, that whole thing. But that was just really crazy to me back in the day. I remember the first time reading that, thinking like, I heard about Mihawk and I just got Lord Shishio vibes, like, oh, this is gonna be his guy. Like, it's obviously for different reasons, but if you've watched enough fighting mangas, especially with swords involved, you guys already know what time it is. Even boy Jin from Samurai Champloo had to basically lose to win. You know what I mean? So it's just for Zoro, man. It's just like the character connection from another character I liked, and he has his own thing and an orthodox fighting style with the sword in the mouth pause like that. I was like, this dude, how is he even doing that? You know what I mean? Like when he was fighting Buggy's crew, he was kind of low diff them. Like he even low diff Captain Curl's crew. It's just that one cat had the super strength after Django was able to hypnotize him, kind of like what we think what Hawkins will be able to do. If you want to time that, Django's ability of hypnotism boosts power, Bello Betty boosts power, and obviously Hawkins boosts power in some way. So it's been pretty consistent. It's just not used in the series a lot. But even with Gats, right, back in Dressrosa, without the crowd cheering, who knows when Luffy wakes up, that kind of thing. But it was funny to me that how hard Sanji ran in the beginning. Just straight up hard, man. He was not having it. You could tell he cared about Zeph and he just didn't want to take his place. Like, even though we didn't know the backstory yet. How he talked to Gin, he was telling Gin, I'll feed you. That's fine. Nobody goes hungry. I know Zeph said you can't have no food, but here, I'm gonna feed you anyway. And even what happened later, and Don Creed was like, look, Zeph, I know you've been to the Grand Line. I don't know how you made it back unscathed, homie, but I was strong enough. I just wasn't smart enough, which is interesting because he was after Zeph's logbook. Throughout the series, logbooks, the importance hadn't really been a thing until Wano, really. The only other logbooks we ever really think about is the fact that Usopp wants to write one because he's writing his tales of a brave sea warrior, and Sabo, right? Before the situation with having amnesia, he wanted to write a logbook too. So it's interesting that he wanted Zeph's, and Zeph's kept his, right? Because of the memories he had. And we know what's going on with Odin and Yamato having Odin's logbook, where it's like, man, this was low key set up. The concept of this was set up decades ago. It's wild to me. Just some things don't transfer generation to generation where it's like you need a book there, to help you out. Like they didn't have internet, even though they have other strange technologies that are similar to ours. They don't have internet, so them having books and thinking about all the time Nami spent reading books and trying to learn how to write maps and navigate the sea and stuff like that. Like, it's just crazy, man, the early setup and the hunger story for Sanji and Zeph being set up in this chapter. Like, you had the Sanji setup, you had Zoro set up for Nami, you had the Bellamere set up for Arlong Park, and that madness of what that situation ended up being, where you're just like, man, all right, Nami, you could ride, man. As long as you only steal for us. You know what I mean? You could ride. I didn't know you had it like that, girl. That's rough, man. And like, I've been there, not for the same reasons, but I've been where Nami's been, man. That's not fun. But yeah, it's funny that I think one other thing about Luffy that made me want to even talk about this was Luffy had to do chores, remember, for destroying part of the Baratie, right? Which wasn't even his fault, but whatever. And I even talked about Luffy having the ability of karmatic rubber, using an ability similar to Roche, where you be able to use his rubber to redirect, like he does with Balloon, but he's never directing it where he needs to, right? The only time he's done something close to deflecting something in a direction had to do with Cracker. And that was a different situation. He was just shooting him into the sky, right? In a sense, right? To send him away from the new world, like how he likes to put it, send you flying. But he didn't have no problem doing the chores. He didn't have no problem with all that stuff. And in his reaction to seeing Zeph's leg, like, oh man, I'm sorry, man. Like, Luffy's an idiot. But I liked when Don Krieg first came back. Because remember, Sanji was like, he told Gin, empty stomachs is one thing, but when you guys come back with full stomachs, it's on the cracking, homie. Even if I gotta beat you all to death, including you with my bare hands, you're not taking the ship, you're not taking nothing from Zeph, I'm just not going. Baratier, put him up, what it is. You know what I mean? All the set, son, you gotta be hype, man. But I like when Don Krieg was talking that trash. And we've seen Luffy do this, but this is the first time in the series where it's really in your face. He knew Zeph was strong, right? And Don Krieg, who knows would have won that fight, but one-on-one anyway. He didn't have no problem with him talking all that trash. Oh, you're going to take this ship. Cool. You're going to take the logbook. As soon as Don Krieg started talking like, oh, I'm going to use this knowledge. I'm going to be king of the pirates and I'm going to rule up. Hold on, Playboy. What did you just say, homie? Just like Kaido told him. Huh? What? What did you just say, man? King of the what? I got to stop you, Playboy. I got to stop you real quick. I'm going to be king of the pirates, man. Other stuff, you talk all you want. You start, because even Luffy said, hey, that's going to be a competitor. I got to fight him now. We ain't waiting for later. You got to go. You got to go today. To me, I was like, yeah, man, let's go, Luffy, man. Let's go. Zoro was hype. It was just chilling. And that right there, that point, I was like, oh, man, I got to talk about this, man. I got to talk about this. I know it's old stuff, but And then two, like you see in my thumbnail, man, when he's saying this to Don Krieg about hold up, he's wearing a dishwashing apron. And on top of that, back there busting suds, man. You know what I mean? Scraping plates, taking out trash and stuff like that. Like, look, don't let this get up fully, man. And to me, it just reminded me of Shanks in a way where he looked like a fool, but what was coming out of his mouth was just true king stuff. You know, like how he did the same thing. You know, back at Makana's bar. Like, oh well, it's not worth getting shedding blood over. Of course, we found out later that they could have just washed them anytime they felt like it, but his that wasn't his point. You know, and even Ben Beckman's like, you know, hey, there's more to being a captain than what you think. You know, and sometimes you got to take some L's basically, and Luffy's taking quite a few. But yeah, that setup chapter with Mihawk getting, you know, low different Don's Krieg and then low different Zoro, and then the fact that Wado never broke and Zoro couldn't beat Kuina, but she died. That's why I'm like, man, I hope Mihawk doesn't die before Zoro gets to fight him, because that would be really annoying. That the two people he couldn't beat, he never got a chance to beat them. They end up just dying before he gets a chance. That's just you know. But it's just funny, man. Luffy, I think that him telling Don Krieg, hey man, that's just facts, man. I'm gonna be a pirate king, man. You gotta chill with that. But yeah, I just wanted to, you know, hit the old time machine with y'all, because I've been having a good time rereading some of this stuff and the character interactions and just little like secrets, right, that end up being playing out later, and just all this stuff I'm seeing. I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna talk about this. So this might go on for, it might take me about 20 videos or so to catch up to where we're at. Just wanted to let y'all know what's going on. Y'all come along with the ride with me, man. Reread the series, man. It's always a good time to reread the series. So, yeah, y'all be safe, man. I appreciate you kicking it for a few, and I might come holler at y'all tomorrow, actually, even though there's no chapter. So look out for that, because it might be Zoro time. Been working. I've been saying that for a minute, but it just takes a long time with him, because there's so much stuff to go over, you know. But yeah, that's about it, man. Be easy, y'all. Peace.